Welcome to the MF Show, your pit stop for celebrity interviews. I'm Rich Waitas.
And I'm Jerry Zaiden, and we're going to talk about hot car topics and the automotive industry and where it takes us.
Now, today's guest is a special guest, and you're probably going to know him just by taking a look across the camera here, and it's none other than Chip Foose. Chip's been a longtime member as an ambassador of MagnaFlow and obviously a designer, a car builder. Pretty much if there's ever anything that's to do with the car industry that looks really cool, I have to say it's probably something to do with Chip Foose. So let's say welcome to Chip Foose and tell him a little bit about what's going on and where to find you out here in the world of automotive today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. And I have to say, I have not received the questions up front.
Wait till you hear these. They're good. They're good. Hopefully it'll make you a little uncomfortable.
Try.
No, we won't do that to you.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for bringing me in.
What we wanted to kind of tell the audience a little bit about is kind of where is Foose Design? Like, there's been a little bit of history there. Kind of tell us, you're a Southern California company. Where do we find it? I know you guys do tours there. People are interested in coming by and checking it out, and you make that available to them.
Well, the shop's in Huntington Beach, California, and I have been in the same location since 1999.
Yeah.
Before that, I basically was working out of my house for a year. I had a little tiny shop in Orange, right off Catella Avenue. But before that, I was at Hot Rods by Boyd. Mm-hmm. Of course, for 8 years, I worked with Boyd. Before that, I was up in Santa Barbara, working for a company called Asha Corporation, where we did development of patentable ideas for the automotive industry and automotive design work. I was the apprentice to Mark Sternberger, who's another designer. I was doing work with him, doing his illustrations, and I had an absolute blast there. Before that, I was working with my father at his shop, Project Design. But my earliest memories are in Gene Winfield's shop, which was originally my father went to work for him up in Modesto. Then he went to work for him when we were in Phoenix. And that's my earliest memories. And it's all those car shows are all the cars that they were building for television shows, like the Get Smart, Little Sunbeam Tiger, and the Bewitched show. And there was Star Trek and the Dean Martin, the Gold Diggers show that he had. Wow. It was just tons and tons of stuff with Gene. And I feel lucky and blessed that I've had the life that I've had. That's, just automotive gold.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you've had your hands in a lot of amazing vehicles over the years. And I love the early stories. And I think everyone else out there loves the early stories. So what was the most unconventional project you work on before gaining recognition, would you say?
I would say that would be my senior project when I was at Art Center College of Design. When Chrysler came in, they asked us to create a niche market vehicle. And the example that they gave us was maybe a guy that likes to work out on an exercise bike could work on that bike that charges a battery for your vehicle, and now you have enough power to get to and from work that day. And, let's not forget this is in 1990. And I thought, wow, okay, I don't believe that I will ever do that in my life, but that's the project they gave us. So I did that. But at the same time, I did a second presentation without talking to any of the other students or my teachers in class. And when Tom Gale came in for the presentation, he was at that time president of design for Chrysler. I did these two presentations and I put them both up. Now you have to know that hot rods or muscle cars at the time, when I was a student at Art Center, if I was drawing a hot rod or a muscle car, it was basically frowned upon, and the teachers and everybody in the trans department would say, you need to focus on the future of hot rod or car design, not hot rods, and you're looking at the past. But I saw an opportunity here because it was a niche market vehicle. And I did two presentations. I did 5 different vehicles based on the example they gave us. But then I did another presentation where I did muscle cars and hot rods and a bunch of different stuff based on cars from the past. And one of them that I had done was a side view of a 70 Cuda with a plan view of a 33 Plymouth.
Okay.
And I morphed that into the car that I called the Hemisphere. And when Tom Gale came to he looked at my 2 presentations. He says, now I know what you're doing here. This is our project, but what are you doing over here? And I said, well, you told us to do a niche market vehicle. So that's what this first presentation is. And everything in this room is based on that. And everyone in this room has developed a niche market vehicle, but we're also trying to develop a customer. I said, what I'm doing over here is I'm catering to customers that exist. I said, there are thousands of people with hot rods, or, they've got old bodies, hot rods and muscle cars that are trying to put modern technology in them so they can enjoy them on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I said, why not tug on the heartstring of memories of people that maybe their dad had a 70 Cuda and we're going to do something that's new.
So what year is this?
This was in 1990.
So 1990, you're in the art school.
Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California.
Okay.
And I gave my whole presentation, all the vehicles and what I had there. And Tom Gale at the end of my presentation says, what would you like to build here? And I said, well, obviously my heart is in the hot rods, but I know you want me to do something over here. And he says, no, I want you to do this hot rod. He fell in love with the one that was a 70 Cuda side view with a plan view of the 33 Plymouth. And I did that, which was the inspiration for the Plymouth Prowler.
Yeah.
And it actually went to production.
Yes.
So, and that was a huge door opener for me. Tom became a good friend and did several projects with Tom. When I left Art Center, I went back to Santa Barbara because the company that I was working for at the time, Asha Corporation, they paid for my education. They put me through school.
Yeah.
And asked me to give them 3 years. So I went back, but the original model that I had done was in Hot Rod Magazine and also was shown at the SEMA show. And when Boyd Coddington saw that, he asked me to do some work for him. So while I was working at Asha Corporation in Santa Barbara, at the same time, I was doing an average of 30 to 50 hours a week of side work for Boyd. I had become his designer, which was an absolute blast. And then when work started getting slow at Asha Corporation, that's when I ended up going to Boyd's full time.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, meeting you, I think it was the first double hauling they did on the Overhaulin show. It's the first time I met you. Our shops are literally, we could walk to each other.
Yeah.
Right? But the one thing that I was most blown away, and it makes a lot of sense of why you went to Art Institute, is just your artistic ability, like how you can draw your perspective. Like that's like the number one thing they teach you in drawing is perspective. But it's like you really absorb that portion, and everything in an automobile is about perspective. Like you could be on this corner and look at a car and you can come to the back, or just an angle changes the way a whole car looks.
True.
And what you do with it, and it's like some of the cars that are in your shop now, how, like the rear fenders and the front fenders, you're like, what was this guy thinking? And you come in and you like fix it. But you're fixing, I don't want to name the car because I don't want to upset anybody, but you're fixing the most iconic cars on the planet, OEM cars, right? Okay, it was a Corvette. But
perfect.
You're putting these lines in this car that are like, it widens it up a little bit in the front fender and the back fender. And when you explain that, you're like, that really makes a lot of sense.
Well, if I'm going to discuss drawing, my dad was a talented artist himself.
Okay.
And I started sitting next to my father at the age of 3. And when he would do a drawing, I would copy it.
Oh, wow.
And when he was done with it, he would leave it on the table and I would draw it over and over and over again. He was my hero and I wanted to be as good as him.
Okay.
And then at the age of 7, I met Alex Tremulous, who was a designer for Auburn Cord Duesenberg. He designed the Tucker back in the 40s. And then he became the head of the Thunderbird studio for Ford back through the 60s. And when he retired, he moved to Ventura, California. And he became a friend of my father's. He would come up to my dad's shop. And I met him, like I say, when I was 7. Wow. The other thing that Alex would do is he used to build models of cars that were his designs.
Wow. And
he would build these models out of wood and he would finish them and bring them to my dad and he would paint them. Well, later I became the painter of his models and we just were good friends. In fact, I took him to see Tucker with a bunch of friends and he's the one that really taught me how to draw to the next level. And then of course, once I went to Art Center,
But you're like Tiger Woods in golf, but with a pencil. Like, you started at 3. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, I'm not going to show you how good I am at golf because the way I keep score is how many balls I lose.
Yes, I'm right there with you. But it's the same analogy, right? Where you started so young with it, and it's like, a lot of people out there, we have the whole push the broom. Like, most of us start with the broom in a shop. Well, you started at 3 years old with the pencil, and then
I would draw, but my job at my dad's shop was I pushed the broom.
Yeah.
But not just inside the shop. I had to sweep the street every day, the whole length of the shop, we were on the airport property.
Okay.
So when the planes would take off, they would blow all the dirt and dust from the airport property into our front of our shop. So I had to sweep the whole, both sides of the street, get everything clean. And I did that every day. And then my job was to detail every car that went through my dad's shop. I detailed and polished and cleaned and scrubbed the interiors because no matter what the job was, if it was just a little tiny ding in a door, I did a complete detail on that car.
So did Mr. Miyagi also learn from your dad? Because I'm seeing the whole Karate Kid here.
But I would polish and clean every car.
That's awesome.
As if it were going to be brand new.
Yeah.
And that was my job. Of course, I was only making, I know when my dad first hired me, he was giving me $0.25 an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say it was something.
And then it seems like it was $1.25 forever.
Yeah. But I mean, to the people listening, there's a young crowd, and the question's always like, how do I get involved? Well, if you're an artist, even if you're not an artist, take art classes if you like to draw. One of my friends, Ramses Perez, he's a marketing guy over at King Shocks. He also went to Art Institute, and I didn't know this for a long time. And then one day he's like, starts drawing stuff, and I'm like, what the heck? But he has that background in design, and it kind of blows your mind when you see trained people and what the capabilities are.
What's interesting is the drawings that I do, I don't consider to be the art. That's just a tool to build the final art, which is the car that we're
concept.
building. Yeah. Or if it's just a product, it's a way of communicating so you can communicate with the person that's fabricating it. I'm showing them on a piece of paper, this is what I want.
It's your blueprint.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we have CAD now and we can 3D model, but I watch all the talented guys, right? Like a Jason Campbell or most of the designers in the off-road world, they'll sit and sketch for hours and ball it up and do it again and ball it. And then they're like, start to get happy with it and save it. And then they find what they want and then they start to design.
Well, if you sit down at the computer and you don't know where you're going,
exactly,
you're going to be there forever.
Yes.
It's faster to sketch it and then sit at the computer and design and develop what you want.
100%. So the inspiration, right? You work for your dad and you've worked with the biggest names in the industry. So what is a design concept you scrapped that you still think about today, and why didn't it make the cut?
Well, I've been lucky and blessed to work with some of the car manufacturers and develop show cars for them. And if you remember the Ford 49, it's a show car that Ford had. I designed that car for J. Mays and Ford.
Okay.
And then we built it. And, I did the initial sketches. The initial sketches of that car were in, if you're familiar with Rodder's Journal, issue number 11.
Oh, wow. So what year are we talking here?
That would have been 98, I believe. Yeah, Steve Koonin asked me to be the artist for that issue. So I sent him a whole bunch of drawings. And if you are familiar with the Sniper that I built with Troy Trepanier, it was a 53 Belvedere with all Daytona. It was a Viper coupe.
Oh, wow.
It made it back into SEMA again this year.
Yeah, it was there this year.
Yeah.
But Tom Gale gave me the Viper coupe that we cut up and put underneath that car.
Okay.
Like I say, once that relationship when I was at Art Center College of Design became a great relationship after I had graduated. And like I say, I called Tom Gale, sent him a picture of a drawing of the Belvedere that we were going to build. And I just asked him if I could get a V10 motor.
Wow.
Can we buy one of these, or, how can I get one? He sent me the entire coupe.
Yeah,
so I called Troy and said, hey, run up to Michigan. The engineering department has this coupe for you. And we put that entire drivetrain underneath the car. But, that's what Art Center did for me. It opened a lot of doors for a lot of different ways. And I forgot what I started to tell you, but where were we?
So we're talking about
the project,
a design or a concept.
Oh,
with something you've done that you've scrapped. I'm sure there's
when I did the Ford 49,
yeah,
which was based off of that that project that was, I had the Belvedere Coupe in issue number 11. And then I did another sketch of a 51 Ford Victoria that was just down a little black and white sketch. And Jay Mays saw that and called me and said, I want to build this here.
Oh, wow.
So I said, do you want me to use an original 49 or start from scratch and do a clay model? He said, let's do a clay model. So we did that. And originally it was just going to be a quick show car. And then he loved it so much, he wanted to actually go to production, which it was slated for production. And it got wiped off the table when Jack Nasser left Ford and William Clay Ford came in. Then that one got wiped off the table. But there was another vehicle that I was working with Jay on at the time, and that was an F100, like a 56 Ford F100.
Okay.
And I did a full-size clay for Ford Motor Company. And, you know, at the time, Jay and Ford were coming out with all these cars that were called the legacy cars.
Yeah.
And we had done the GT40 and done several other cars.
The GT40.
Well, yeah.
I remember those at SEMA, early 2000s.
Well, the original sketch for that I did when I was working on the 49.
Wow.
And I did a sketch and I put it on top of the interior drawings I was doing for the 49. And I put a little note on there. I said, Jay, I have a customer who's interested in building this. Do you think Ford would like to get involved? And I put that on top of the interior sketches and I sent it that day, you know, FedExed it to Jay. The next morning, he calls me and he says, tell me about this GT40. I said, well, like I say, I've got a customer who wants to build it. Do you want to get involved? He says, well, who all knows about it? And I said, just my customer and I. And then he asked me, well, who's your customer? And I laughed. I said, it's me. Because I really wanted to build it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, then I want to build that here.
Okay.
So we actually I was lucky enough to be able to go back there 4 different times and work on the clay model with the group.
Yeah.
But what a fun project.
Yeah, absolutely. I looked at those cars. I was a truck guy, right? So to me, it was all about trucks. I had a 93 F-150. And I remember when those cars, the GT40s, hit SEMA. And to me, it was like, okay, it's like the speed racer kind of car. And then it had the 5.4 liter, because actually at that time I had a newer F-150, but it had the 5.4 liter engine in it with the supercharger on it.
Yes.
And I looked at that and goes, why would they put a truck engine in a car? It wasn't like commuting to me, right? Like I couldn't comprehend it really.
But I was going to finish the car that I really wanted to build.
Yeah.
Was we did the full-size F-100, like a 56 Ford F-100.
Okay.
But modernized.
Yeah.
And Jay called me. He says, hey, I'm getting beat up in the press for doing things from the past.
Okay.
So we're going to stop on the truck. And that truck project got stopped. And I wish that we had finished it.
Got it. Yeah. So that's like, you see that a lot, right? I was at Rod Miller Motorsport around the corner when they used to be on Reynolds Circle. And they did some like old Land Cruisers. Rod actually still has it, right? Bitch and vehicle.
Yeah, widened one.
Yes.
It's really cool.
It's really cool. And you look at these things and you're like, we love the retro stuff. And you'll see like, you know, the manufacturers will wind up with these things every now and then. And, you know, they did the FJ Cruiser. It took off for a while, did well. And then here, you know, you got Jeep making Jeeps.
I think it's a real shame that the press, you know, ended up being the ones that directed where Ford was going.
Instead of the
Because to me, it's not retro if it's an evolution of what it was.
Correct.
You know, it's still going forward. And the 2 cars that, in my mind, are the 2 representatives of a car that was evolutionary is the Corvette and the 911.
Yes.
The Corvette made a giant leap when they went to the C8.
Yes.
And I think it kind of lost that evolution. It became something new. Mm-hmm. But the 911 is still evolving to this day.
It is. And I'm a 911 fan, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know anybody that isn't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, that's my drug, right? Like,
Well, do you have one?
I do.
Good.
Yeah. Few.
How many?
A few. I'll just leave it at a few. Older and newer. I love the cars. I've had the pinnacle of the cars. And you're right. They are true to that. I've talked to some of the designers at GM who are involved, or, you know, there's the back end story. But what really sucks is like the new C8, it's a really bitchin' car. There's no doubt about it. But when one of the prerequisites is like, you got to fit golf clubs in the back of it, it's like they just lost sight of what the car is. It's like, really? So you're selling, they don't want that guy owning the car. They want youth, but then you still have to fit the golf clubs in the back of the car. And that's why the back's so wide so they can fit the golf clubs. It's like if you lose that part of it, what does that car become, right? And as not a Corvette guy, but I appreciate him, everything older is beyond amazing, right? Those cars are just super iconic. And then you get into the C6 and the C7, and they're just mind-blowing on performance. And then you see the C8, but then now you're seeing like the Z06 and what it's doing, and the ZR1s and what those are going to be doing. And it's kind of cool to see Chevy and Ford battling out now with this GTD and the ZR1. Like these are like 1,000 horsepower, close to it, American.
Is it really battling it out when you have a limited quantity run on a GTD that's a $300,000 car that's competing against a $150,000 vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, the GTD, I think there's a lot of hype around that car. I mean, their benchmarks the GT3 RS, which I find amusing because that's a 500 horsepower car that smokes the Nürburgring, and then Ford's going to come out and they're doing this whole thing on the GTD doing the Nürburgring going up against that. But then what happens when Porsche drops the GT2 RS that has the 700, 800 horsepower, right? And it's like, that's more comparable. But the Chevy, like how many ZR1s do you think they'll make? I have no idea.
It's going to be a small quantity.
But thousands?
But it's a production car. I mean, I think that's the interesting part of that world is that what made the 911 continue to be something interesting was it was always a production car.
Yes.
And, you know, Mustang up until really the GTD, your GT500s, GT350s, they were all vehicles that were made for everyday buyers to come out there. Yeah. So they had a compromise for golf clubs, grocery bags, which the C8 still does, which when the C8 benchmarked, they were looking at the 458 Ferrari as the benchmark. You know, they weren't chasing Porsche. They were going after Ferrari territory and with power and, you know, the mid-engine design. So they kind of took a left turn to, like your point, Chip. It's like, is a vehicle that went through an evolutionary jump, but changed a target. You know, the American muscle car, which the Mustang is, and which really the Corvette was in its original inception, it really wasn't until the C8 where it became a vehicle that was now an exotic competitor rather than your traditional muscle
car.
car.
$70-something thousand.
Right.
So that's the big thing with the C8. And if we think back in the history of the muscle cars, we had this American big power and lots of weight. And then here comes that little Porsche 356, and our Americans are scratching their head going, wait a minute, like, how's that beating us? Skinny little tires, under 100 horsepower. I mean, what, maybe like 50 or 60 horsepower or something, right?
Well, that's when I was doing the Art Center project. You know, when I presented to Tom Gale, I presented it in that way that, you know, there are so many people with muscle cars and hot rods in their garages or side yards that they don't have the money or the means to do these, but they have a dream that one day they're going to do it. And we can build something that tugs at the heartstrings of memories.
Absolutely.
And brings them right into the past.
Yeah.
But by being evolutionary, it's new.
Correct.
And that's where the Camaro and the Mustang and the Challenger all came from. That same thing. Then we ended up getting the Volkswagen Beetle.
Right.
We've got the FJ.
Yes.
And there's been
and now we have the
Mini,
Bronco back.
The Bronco.
The Mini.
That all came from what I was trying to present.
And that makes a lot of sense because that's what we remember that growing up, but now we get our modern version of it.
Where they're catering to customers that exist instead of trying to, you know.
And it really makes a lot of sense. Like I never thought of it from that perspective before, but seeing it, it makes, I mean,
it's the way I presented it because I really wanted to build it.
Yes. Yeah, that's really cool. So then I guess another question, the unseen challenges, right? So has there ever been a car you regretted taking on as a project? So obviously you've had a lot of passion for building cars.
Not the car, but possibly the customer.
Okay. So, and that's what, if so, what made it so challenging or frustrating?
When they know better than we know what to do. Because they've talked to their friends and they read something somewhere and this is what they want.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to educate them on every decision. Yeah. You know, we know where we want to go, but it makes the project take 10 times longer and it's going to get a lot more expensive when you're going down one path and they say, hold on. You know, I talked to my friend and he told me about this article I needed to read and this is what we should be doing this. And when it's their car, you want to build their dream.
Yeah.
So then you're stopping
listening
and
to their
changing and
friends,
doing
right?
things, and you're not, Larry Erickson, who's another designer, he said it to me best. He said, "You're not going to hit a home run every time you come to bat, but just swing."
Yeah.
And these customers, they're wanting to hit a home run every time. So they're second guessing everything that we're doing instead of just letting us build a car. It's the customer is the difficult part.
I've always found that interview process was like the most critical stage as a designer, when you take that minute to like feel out what it is they're trying to do, because so many times you'll get somebody who's like, "I like that." And they point to something that somebody else designed in a different way. Yet they've come to you, who they've seen your style, they've seen how your output looks like, and you're like, "How can you make it like that?" And when you have that conversation and they take all that little input, like, "Hey, this is the coolest thing this year. They've got this new feature. It's made out of carbon fiber. I want that on that car." And then, they got this new front splitter piece. I want that on that car. And then all of a sudden, you're not really designing a car. You're an assembler at that point in time, trying to cobble together some sort of design. I know it's got to be frustrating sometimes too. We spend a lot of time on TV sets, working on vehicles where we've had that truncated time circle. But one of the biggest things we spent the most amount of time was sitting down with those insiders and getting that information of like what it is that person wants. Because now we're going to let you, the designer, take the reins and make it real, versus trying to throw darts at a board and hopefully have something that comes out. And I know we ran through that problem in the TV world too, because we had 7 to 10 days, we'll say that for most of the time, to come up with something that was a creation that you can put your stamp on, that was an iteration of what somebody else told us that they wanted. So it's a real frustration, I think, in the design world, when you've got a person who wants your touch, but is going to put in 15 other pieces of input into it, and yet they still want to entrust their money with the designer of choice.
Yeah, and for me, anything that's trendy, I want to run away from.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything that is trendy, because it will date the vehicle.
Correct. Right.
It's like stereo system to me is the number one thing that'll date a vehicle. You put the most current head unit in it, and when you look at that car 3 or 4 years from now, oh yeah, I remember those.
How about a tweed interior?
So I'm always trying to hide, a stereo system. I want to hear it, but I don't want to see it. And when you're working with a customer that they're thinking, I want it to be the most trendy thing that they can, and they're pushing you to do these things, it takes my motivation away. I start to lose interest in the project.
Yeah.
I want to do something that I'm proud of, and that may may set a trend, but I don't want to follow any trend.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because, out in the lobby of MagnaFlow is your 67 C10. And when you look at that truck, I mean, it is immaculate. But when you look at the interior of it, it looks all factory. Mm-hmm. Completely factory.
That build, what I was trying to do was, it's a what if GM was building a sport truck in 1967.
Yes.
They had the engine in the Z28 Camaro. Mm-hmm. And when I found that block and that motor, in 67, they didn't keep track of the VINs on what was a Z28 and what was not.
Got it.
They only made 636 of those blocks.
Oh, wow.
And not all of them were in Camaros. There were some blocks that were held back and used for replacement blocks, but only 636 were built. I don't know how many Z28s were built, but if you have one of those blocks in a 67 Camaro, it is a real Z28. And when I found that motor, I thought I could put this in a Camaro and have a real Z28. But I thought, how cool it would be if I build a truck and make it look like it was a factory-built sport truck.
And it's beautiful. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, I have a 68 C10. I showed you the video on that. Mine's just like some patina.
It's a monster. It's cool.
A monster. It's a hot rod, right? But it's a performance, go do burnouts in a parking lot or go autocross type truck. The truck you build is something like you would want to just drive it across the country.
Yeah, and I wanted to build something that would be timeless.
Yes.
20 years from now, it still looks really cool, and it's nothing on that truck is trendy. It's just, what if in 1967 GM built a sport truck? The only thing that's updated is I did a set of wheels on it. When I originally built the truck, I put a set of 15-inch rally wheels, which would be what would come on a Camaro. Mm-hmm. And everything, when you open the glove box, it's got all the list
I saw
Just
that.
The RPO code.
Is that the actual original one? Or
No,
is that a
I
remake?
took a picture of that and then recreated it.
Nice.
And then everything that's done on that track, on the truck, I call it the C28 package.
So you did your own.
So it's got numbers to it. We just made everything up.
I'm going to have to look at that.
But when you read it, it's like everything that's done to the truck is
Just
on
like-
that code.
Well, my 68, I still have the original one in mine. It's all torn and ripped.
Yeah, this one was in there, but I added to it.
Yeah.
The C28 package.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to look at.
Bumpers and suspension and the motor and
Yeah.
Well, little details too. I mean, probably no one on the outside is ever going to notice it, but like even the engine stamping, when you were talking about putting it together, you were looking at the date stamp to make sure that it would be viable inside of that chassis, like the month that casting was made. You went to that nth degree, insofar as even going to and having that cool dealership Rydell logo put on the back that's error correct for that vehicle.
Yeah. Wes Rydell has been a great customer of mine. We built several cars for him. And I've been back to his place, and I remember seeing that emblem on a toolbox back there. So I called Doug Peterson, that works in what Wes has, what he calls the toy shop.
Yeah.
And that's his hot rod shop. And so I called Doug and said, "Hey, do you have one of those Rydell Chevrolet badges like the one on your toolbox?" He said, "Yeah, I do. What do you want it for?" I said, "I'm building the truck and I want to put it on there.
That
like
is so cool.
This is the dealership that it was bought at."
So this is like hits on something I want to say is like when you walk around SEMA, there's so much noise in every direction, like that full carbon fiber body, that and this and whatever. But then there's these builds that are around the show where there's like real true detail in them. It's not just like you said, just the trendy thing today, but there's like detail and homage to the old school, but it's new. And that's what I think some people miss when they walk by too fast, right?
Those are the builds that stop me, and I look at them and think, "Oh, I wish I'd have built this."
I see a lot of that too.
Yeah.
So
those are the builds that inspire me,
yeah,
where everything is thought out and it's detailed.
it's detail, but that's your background, right? Like sweeping the whole street wasn't just the shop, right? So the detail is ingrained in your mind, which is cool. So then the personal ride, what's one car in your collection that holds a story most people don't know about? Because you have a lot of cars.
Well, there's my 56 pickup that, of course, Bud Brutzman, the producer, he stole it from my shop, hired my dad, and then they ran a team and they gave it to me. That's the most precious car I own because of, it's my first car I ever owned, and my father built it. And it's, something that I'll always care about. I never want to get rid of it.
Is this the one up on the lift?
No.
No. It's not.
It's the black one we had in Overhaulin called Project Overhaulin.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. It and 6 of my other cars are all in Nebraska at the Speedway Museum right now.
Oh, wow.
The other one is I have a car called the Hemisphere, which was my senior project when I graduated from Art Center.
Okay.
It took me almost 20 years to build it, but I finally got around and built it in conjunction with Metal Crafters in Fountain Valley.
Yeah.
And we built 5 of them.
Oh, wow.
So I own the prototype, which is the lime green one.
Okay.
But I also own a car that my father built in 1975. Now, my dad graduated in 1953 from Santa Barbara High School.
Oh, wow.
And he had a dream of building this 48 Ford chop top. He didn't get around to building it until 1975.
Okay.
And I got to be a part of that build. And then he sold it and went to a friend of his. And I always called Jack and told him that when you want to sell this car one day, I want to buy it back because it represented my childhood to me.
Yeah.
So he called me one day. He says, "Okay, I'll sell you the 48." Now I had just recently started working at Boyd's. I didn't have a lot of money, and he told me he wanted $50,000 for it.
Wow.
I said, "Okay, let me put some money together, and then I'll get back to you." So about a year later, because I couldn't go to my wife and say I want money out of our account, so it was little side things that I would do and little odd jobs, and I was putting money together. So I got the money together so I wouldn't take any money from the household. And I called Jack and said, "Okay, I've got the money. I'm going to come up this weekend." He says, I need 90 grand now.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, well, I can't do that now. I said, all right, well, let me see if I can put that money together. So it took me a little bit of time. And, I was still trying to put that money together. And it was just, it seemed difficult because every time that my wife wanted to do something on the house, I'd take from that.
Life happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I never got there. And I got a call from Jack one day and he says, I've got some good news and some bad news. And I said, well, what's that? And he says, you're going to get the coupe back. And I said, well, I don't have the money. He says, I don't need the money. He says, I want you to get it. I'm going to go back to the original price, 50 grand. But he says, I've got cancer and I want you to give the money to my daughter. I don't care if you have it now or later, but give it to her and the car is yours.
Oh, wow.
And he died. He says, I need some help selling some cars. Mm-hmm. So if you know who Wes Rydell is, Jack had a 48 Cadillac Fastback. And Wes Rydell has a white Cadillac Fastback that the Ring brothers built. Mm-hmm. That's the car. I called Wes right away and said, hey, I have a beautiful, all original. It was a one paint job original car, no rust in it, beautiful car. Wes bought it right away, and then he sent it to the Ring brothers to build. But I helped him sell 3 cars, and then I had the money in about 3 weeks, but he only lasted 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I got the money to his daughter, but I have that car now. It's the one that I built with my dad when I was a kid. That's really the car that means the most to me.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
We've had the pleasure of having both of those in the showroom here, and it's unique to say that we've had these industry icon vehicles that have been notorious outside the industry, but are also that are so meaningful to you. So being able to share that, I think, too, and you can see in those vehicles the amount of labor and what goes into like the love of that car. And of course, people got to share in that with the building of Project Overlord on TV, which I think was pretty cool. And I think you can really see what your investment was when we kind of tormented you a bit on the show. You were very worried there for a good period while we were building the car, and you were helping us build the other car. And then I think is it the Roush booth where we had it at?
Yep.
They obviously donated the motor to it, and
which is a cool motor.
Yeah, by the way, badass motor.
All aluminum 427 side oiler.
Oh, wow.
So when you see a Cobra 427, it's the same motor.
Yeah.
But aluminum block.
That's really cool.
You walked around the corner, and I think Bud was with you, and just the look on your face when you said, wait, that's my truck. And I think that moment we captured pretty well was your investment, because there was a good moment there where we were worried on the set watching you go through the emotions of someone stole my dad's truck. And it was pretty gut-wrenching for you. I mean, there was days you took a moment to just get off the set and kind of rebalance to come out and do the work. And we're sitting there going, holy crap, we just put Chip through all of this emotional turmoil. We got to make him work, and we're going to be working tonight on it. And then finally at SEMA was probably the biggest relief of the people working on that project, was to watch you finally get to appreciate that. So it's definitely one where we could see the emotional investment was in that truck.
I thought somebody was messing with me
at first.
When the truck was stolen.
Yeah.
They also stole the Foose design sign off the front of the building.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, okay, who's going to steal the truck, and then where it came from? So I thought, okay, somebody's messing with me. But at that time, I was doing shows for Funkmaster Flex on the East Coast. And Flex had asked me if I knew any celebrities with cars that he could put on his show. So I thought, oh, he took my truck and he's going to present it to me at one of his shows. I had signed a deal to do 5 shows with him. So every time I was going to a show, I was thinking, I'm going to get my truck. And I did the last show and I didn't get a truck. And I remember that week.
Then you're like, wait a minute, where's my truck?
That week that I had finished up everything with Flex, I was driving and I realized my truck's really gone.
Yeah.
And I was pretty emotional. I was actually crying just driving, thinking about my truck.
Yeah.
And I called my dad just to share my emotions with him. I didn't know it, but he and I talked for about 15 minutes. Well, he was standing next to the truck because he was working on it. So it was when Jack Roush asked me if I would cut the ribbon for his new motor, he was just releasing the new motor.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I thought it was a curtain that was going to go up and we were going to show the motor. Well, they dropped the curtain and it was my dad standing next to the truck.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And the first thing I did, I looked at the truck and I could see all the proportions that had been changed, which was all the drawings I had done of the truck. That was what I wanted to build for myself.
Wow.
But I ran to the back to see if it had my license plate on it. And I saw the Foose on the back, and I was just so excited.
That is really cool.
That everybody went through that effort to do something for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that truck will never be sold.
No.
we've had a few projects that we've worked with you on, and some of them that are very understated. We did that beautiful Ford 5-window that we had in the booth that one year, that green one.
The green one. Yep.
But that was a fun project, though, because that was something where we actually got to highlight some of the elements that we did. We had that flathead supercharged motor in it, but we wanted to do something different to make it not sound like a flathead Ford motor. And it was cool to be able to kind of go through it and kind of over the equal length stuff and talking about the tech that goes into a 180 style header. So we were crossing firing paths from both sides. And it was pretty unique when that car fired up. It's a flathead that didn't quite sound like a
Doesn't
flathead.
sound like a flathead, yeah.
Had a very
Sounds really cool.
very unusual tone to it. And obviously, it's kind of cool, too, because not everybody gets to see what you did with the period correct part of that build. I even love the little logo you created for us, the MagnaFlow period correct logo. But
as if MagnaFlow existed back in the 50s.
Right, as a hot rod, because that's kind of what you did with that. It was sort of a discrete sort of sleeper hot rod, I guess you'd call it. Because under the hood was a supercharged flathead. Yet on the outside, you kind of kept all the lines intact and did the usual Foose treatment and making sure that everything fit right.
You know, sometimes cars have survived so long, it'd be a shame to cut them up. And that's what that car was to me. It was a 32 Ford 5-window coupe, and I didn't want to cut anything on the body. So the body is all stock. But it was, you know, what else can we do? And the only really wild thing done on it is the wheels and the exhaust. So I thought, I'm going to build an equal length 180. So of course I called you and picked your brain and figured out how to do it. That's the first set of headers I've ever built myself. You know,
It's pretty wild in all the fabrication work that's been out there. But I did learn of your aversion of building exhaust pretty quickly on Overhaulin. So,
oh, well, you saved us.
It was a fun time. It was a great opportunity, I think, for the rest of the world, too, to kind of peek inside of what is in Chip's head, because so many times, people can appreciate the finished cars. They can go to the Grand National Roadster Show and see the Amber Award winner. They can see that finished part, but through all the craziness that's building car TV, I think one of the things that gave us was insight to you with a person, because I mean, I don't know how many times, we'd be waking up at 1 a.m. in the morning to the sound of chips still pounding on metal. Your investment into your passion showed throughout the fact it was a TV show. There was no off time, really. I mean, you look at, what was it, season 1 through 5.
We did 87 cars in 5 years.
Yes.
Wow.
In 5 seasons.
Most people build like 2 or 3 cars in 5 years.
Well, the first episode that we did, Bud Brutzman, the producer, and we did the exhaust system on that car. And I don't remember how many hours, but it was...
Who took pictures?
There was nobody around. They weren't filming it. It was just Bud and I trying to piece together the original exhaust that we had, cutting things up, looking for pieces of tubing. And that was the most difficult part of the build to me, was piecing together and building an exhaust system. And when Richard came in, it was like, I got it. And he just did these beautiful exhaust systems that were complete and nice and beautiful and worked and done in a reasonably short time.
Yeah, back to the details.
It allowed me to focus on the details of the rest of the car.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that was probably the interesting part about that show, too, was how much talent we had working on that car. It was your direction, your design. But the only way possible to get this done by these deadlines is you had to give your vision to the guy that was doing the wiring, the person who was doing the interior. And it was kind of like that football huddle. Here we go. Here's everybody's project. Break. Now go do your thing.
Go.
And it's pretty wild in that sense to be able to experience at a small pace what it's like to be that designer person, because you gave us a lot of autonomy through all the people that were builders on the show to get to the end, as long as we made it there in time by whatever means we had.
Treat it like you own it. Do what you do on your own car. Whatever it takes to get it done. I need it done. You've got 6 hours to get this part done.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of times, too, people don't take in consideration the fact that they look at too much other TV. And I will say other TV at that time, because we did work 24/7 on those first few seasons, passing out, going into diabetic arrhythmia stuff that I had. It was pretty wild to see that level of effort put in. But I don't think it was really shown up until then, because, the earlier years, you would have your stunt mechanics, right? You have the guy who turns the wrench, the beauty shot, and then you had the finished product. But that show really gave people, I think, some insight and a whole lot of motivation to kind of get out and do it themselves.
Yeah.
Because from that, I mean, there was guys that you had that had their own shops on the show, and there was people that just volunteered because they wanted to be a part of it. And
it was a family atmosphere.
Absolutely.
And everybody wanted to help each other.
And that was, I think, the one thing that is, as far as a takeaway you could see, and I think this is from your direction as well, was it's not a wrench throwing show.
No.
There's too many of those.
We did the first episode, and that was in Budnick's shop, Alan Budnick, the wheel company. We did the first episode there. The second episode was shot in Robbie Gordon's off-road shop.
That's right.
And I showed up there to start the build, and I was told that I had to go to a meeting upstairs. And so I went upstairs, and there were a couple executives from the Discovery Channel there. And they asked me if there was anybody on the A team that I could throw a wrench at or that I could fire and throw out of the shop. And I said, absolutely not. That's not my personality. And they said, well, we're looking for drama. And I said, you have the drama.
Yeah.
The drama is Chris and what he's doing to the owner of this car.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing about the whole show is the fact that the home viewer is in on that drama.
Correct.
They know what we're doing, and they know that we're pranking this owner. We got to put them through a little bit of hell before we give them their slice of heaven, which is their dream car.
Right.
And, you know, I told him, I said, we could film this as the last show, or we could film 500 shows. I don't know where it's going to end. But in the end, I want people to know who I am. I'm not an actor. I'm a car builder.
Right.
So I'm going to be myself on the show because I'm still going to have a hot rod shop where I'm trying to build the most beautiful pieces of rolling art that I can build for people. And I want them to know who they're going to deal with if they come to me.
It's pretty cool because kind of staying true to form, I think one element of that is actually in this room is Overhaulin, Jerry, me, you. We all had a part in that first season and that double hauling at the end. And how ironic is it that, you know, all of these forces between MagnaFlow, Camburg, and Foose Design are kind of getting together again today. I mean, how cool was it to be on the show in like kind of the infancy of like Camburg coming out on TV and then now like working together all over again?
Well, it's cool because I'm in this conversation back and forth. I'm thinking to myself, like, what year, what season? I honestly had no idea. So Double Haulin was the last episode of the first season?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then...
That we filmed at MagnaFlow.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I got a call. I think Adam worked at MagnaFlow at the time.
Diaz, yeah.
Yeah, Adam Diaz. Hey, you know, what do you think? Do you want to... do you guys want to help out on a build? We're doing Overhaulin. I'm like, we don't really do hot rods. And he goes, but we're doing a show with a truck. So there's two sisters. One has a truck.
P3000.
Yeah, it wasn't even a Ford Ranger.
No.
It was like the Mazda version of the Ford Ranger. Same truck, though.
Yep.
And then what was the other car? Nova, I think?
No, it was
Chevelle.
68.
Yeah.
68 Chevelle. Oh, my gosh. Zach would be very bummed. If
Yeah.
We had Michael Valley on there because
Yes.
we did the custom
Gosh,
paint.
yeah.
Yeah. And so on the show, I mean, I knew who you were by hearing of you, but I never worked with you or a lot of the people. And there's so much talent in there, right? From the painter and then seeing a lot of things you would do or how they would do the paint on that truck, like, you know, with the water under the paint, like all these like tricks on things. And, you know, we're just off-road truck guys. We're like, just who cares what it's painted
But
like?
we couldn't do it without you.
The paint? No, you could have done that.
What we
without-
did on the show, we couldn't do without all the people that helped.
Oh, absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And I mean, I just remember like, hey, we have this much time to do this. And I'm like, wait, we do this for a living.
We're going to do what by when?
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, we're going to need to bring a few more people. And everything was wide open. And one of the best parts about the show that no one ever sees on the show is the food.
Yeah.
The back end. Anyways, no, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, that was 24 hours a day. And that was a lot of work.
2 cars.
Yeah, and then every now and then you got to stop doing things because of the talking and explaining, and then 2 cars are going on. So
Or we'd do a prank, and then we'd set up a monitor
Yes.
and bring everybody together to watch what Chris just did to the owners.
yes.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, and so it was really special. So yeah, I mean, I just thank you for having us on the show because we had a blast. I go on my computer and I like go searching for my kids when they were really little at like what was on the for the pictures, and then I run across that photo album that's like from there because I brought my camera and took a bunch of pictures. But yeah, that was cool. So tying all that in, Foose Performance, MagnaFlow, MagnaFlow Group.
Yeah, I'm very excited. We've been working together. We started in, what was it, 2002.
Yep.
We started with rides. 2004 was when we were doing Overhaulin.
Yep.
And so that's 20 years we've been working together.
Indeed.
And we're working on our deal now that I'm going to actually start developing some new products that MagnaFlow can start manufacturing. And I'm really excited about Foose Performance. We're going to be making keychains and gloves.
That's what you guys, that's what we say. Those are code words. It's kind of going back to the Skunks team there.
It's all the accessories for those keychains and gloves that are going to be really, really fun. We haven't disclosed exactly what we're going to be building, but when you look at the relationship between Camburg and MagnaFlow now and where they're going, we're just hoping to expand on that whole process and where we're going. I think we can do some things for this industry that have not been done yet.
Yeah.
At a level that I think that, is appropriate. Camburg is the premium of suspension out there. And we've got Foose Design, working with us at that same level, and MagnaFlow in the exhaust. So what other way could you join three better brands that can complement one another than with this new kind of product line that we're going to leave to discussion a little further here?
Yeah, it's definitely cool. You go out in the showroom and we have this display that we made, and Camburg's coming out now. Like, we make brake calipers and shocks and all these cool things. And the off-road world is like shocked. They're like, that's not just, you're not making another product. You just drop the mic. Like, you've elevated the products. And so in the world that Foose Performance is in, I can only imagine what we're going to see coming out of there. Because
you're the off-road, we're on-road.
Correct. And that's going to be the special part because, we have all your expertise in design and art and attention to detail with all the engineering behind MagnaFlow. And I don't think people realize how
you
big
have the production capabilities already.
Yeah.
So my mind I have so many pictures in my mind of things that I want to do. And we're getting through the contract now, and I can't wait to just turn that pencil loose.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So we're looking
excited.
forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be some fun times. Well, Chip, thank you for coming in today. We gave our audience a lot to kind of go back and see on how our relationship developed and some very cool future things that are coming. But speaking about how the audience can find out more information, can you let us know where the audience can get, how to buy some merch, maybe how to come down and visit the shop, or where to find you on social media?
Thank you so much. And you can find me at foosedesign.com. You can find me at Chip Foose Official on Instagram and Foose Design on YouTube.
You can find me at Rich Waitas at Oxidizer on social media.
And I'm Jerry Zaiden. I could be found at Jerry Zaiden on all social media platforms. And for MagnaFlow, it's MagnaFlow TV on YouTube and at MagnaFlow on all other social channels. And this has been the MF Show.